we'll go ahead and kick it off with Ian Tan, CTO and Head of IT Infrastructure at SM Prime Holdings. Ian, are you with us?
Hi, good morning. Hi, Chris.
All right. Well, let's start at the high level. Last month, your company celebrated its 30th anniversary of being listed. It was a bell ringing ceremony. Congratulations. You have operations and investments in the Philippines and China. How do you ensure that threat intelligence, incident response, cyber attacks, and third-party data access and so on are uniform, standardized, and compliant? It's a mouthful. There's a lot to unpack there, but what a way to get started, right?
That's huge, Chris. Again, allow me to say hi to everybody. And Chris, that's a loaded question to start with. But maybe to isolate the governance piece, right? And you mentioned about standardization and uniform of the compliance of the infrastructure guidelines. Governance plays a critical part in this because you have to assess and monitor the security posture on both internal and the vendors, plus the partners. It's not an internal mission. It's an overall view of whoever connection, wherever the connection is routing from, including the data access management or agreement, because you need to maintain consistency as you mentioned, and with these agreements there will be a tailor-fit definition of the persona of the vendors and partners, including the internal enterprise team members. And uh, uh, aside from that, you need to also enable the least privileged access and maintain necessary accesses and permits to their role. And from that's for the governance piece, right? And I believe one of the core mission is also to adapt a framework. It's very important that the guidelines in the identity, that's number one, the protection, the detection, even the response, and even the recovery playbook it should be in place, and including the maintenance and quality control. And maybe you mentioned also the incident response and the threat intelligence. So you also need to integrate those automations piece. You have to ensure the uniformity of this data being collected in one cohesive environment and the control points is in place. Whether the data is shared, whether the data is isolated in a control user group, or the data is utilized to the common.
Mhm.
And orchestration of intelligence is another key because most of us in IT, we have different sets of tools, but most often than not, it's not in one inclusive environment. So therefore, it's hard to orchestrate. Uh, and it should be sounding in one creative environment, and should be able to orchestrate and see it in a single pane of glass, and you're able to report what is the actual near real time, if not real time, security posture of the company. Maybe the last piece is to standardize the incident response because there are a lot of level of responses in the playbook, and this playbook should be aligned to specific types of incidents. And if I may, a drill and simulation,
Mhm.
at the very least, to ensure all the members are familiar in how to execute it effectively.
Right. So there's a lot there. You mentioned least privilege access, governance, orchestration. A lot of these topics roll up under zero trust, which we'll definitely get into in just a second here. But in terms of your organization and its ability to provide end users with a consistent experience accessing resources, regardless of where they are, let's start there because it seems like a lot of zero trust journeys do begin with the ultimate customer, which is the end user. So, what role does the visibility into that end user experience play in achieving your objectives?
Well, you mentioned about visibility and consistent access. Maybe we can share about the keys to have an honest application whitelisting. And for me, it should be tailored to the access profile. And access listing may sound very small task, but access whitelisting has a lot of components in there. There's connecting to specific apps. There's enforcement of policy, you know, and there's also an evaluation of security risk, and you have to verify who, what, where, in terms of location of originating point of connectivity, where is it heading, what's the next route hop, who is accessing what, who is accessing from where. And visibility is number two also, because most of the legacy systems in terms of security only have pulses. They cannot see the persona of persona number one connecting to mission critical number two. And uh, I think the framework enables us to have that consistent access by whitelisting, and with that white access whitelisting and being honest to the route path gives us a good headroom for visibility and control.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll dive more into the end user experience monitoring capabilities that you have. But let's take a step back and talk about your overall zero trust architecture. I think you've deployed over 2 years ago or around that time frame at SM Prime. Could you walk us through some of your deployment milestones?
Oh, well, it's really doing a deep dive of what is the current context of our infrastructure, both server, network, policies, including the orchestration of the assets. And also, it's a good partnership with our talent and our human resources just to communicate the transformation, because that's an important key. And we also partner with key stakeholder to make sure that the technology is being introduced to solve the complexity of the processes. And as we introduce the technology, it's better to really partner on the training. The a one pager infographic will help, because it's not an overnight a magic introduction of technology. So we still deep dive on the enterprise architecture approach with people, process, technology.
Thank you. Before I hand it back to Kavita, the idea of working in collaboration with HR on the comms piece of the transformation is definitely something to explore deeper, if not on this session, perhaps on a future one. Kavita,
Yeah.
welcome back.
Thank you. My sincere apologies for connectivity issues. And I live in one would say the most technologically enabled and evolved cities or parts of the world here in the Silicon Valley, but our network connectivity issues still persist in the last mile. So my apologies. And Chris, thank you so much for jumping in and kicking this off. Ian, my apologies. So I was listening in actually a little bit before I went live on your obviously your digital monitoring experience with us and evaluating kind of ZDX, the pivot, and all of that. But Ian, if I may come back to it, part of the whole sort of genesis of moving into or deploying ZDX really started with you assessing kind of your security posture and looking at your network topology and really being able to build a case around your internet access, your remote, your private access, et cetera, and moving to a zero trust architecture and sort of the benefits within, right? And as a consequence of that, you had worked on a business value analysis of what kind of the not just the technical and the operational kind of changes, but what the financial benefits would be for your organization, and built a case to go work with your board. I want to understand a little bit how you did that in terms of gaining champions, the exercise, because a lot of people are very skeptical about this whole notion of business value or ROI calculation. So I remember in our prep call, we talked about this.
It's fun to share, because most of the ISEC executive just us knowing all the architecture or knowing the infrastructure state, but we never count how much of a dollar sign is a 1 hour downtime. How much is a dollar sign if one engineer of technical support group spends 4 hours reviving a workstation or a laptop infected by a virus, right? So this BVA exercise is really a reminder of putting value to each of this, and you can navigate. Oh, I can transfer the cost allocation for the inconsistency up to introducing a new tool and maybe integrating a new process that bridge the gap for inefficiency that the may caused by an infection or a threat to an endpoint, and maybe a network downtime which requires a complex investigation. I mean, you're lucky if you have RCA in the next 50 minutes if you have the outage, right? So, so I think it's an honest take of really having an assessment and whether how you measure in terms of how you deploy engineer, how do you do RCA, how many time to recover, and what is the dollar value are we losing if we cannot drill down to the root cause of any of these inconsistencies in the complex infrastructure. I think that's a very good exercise, and I was privileged to really squeeze in a one-pager deck. Imagine that all those numbers, all those number of tickets. Of course, we also need to qualify. There was also a question with the BVAP and the Ian, how many tickets are you addressing on the endpoint issues, right? So we were able to revisit it back again, and not on the ITSM hat, but more of a holistic view in terms of IT serving the enterprise. And it's a good exercise, and it gives us an honest view of where we are.
No, I think it's kind of a fantastic perspective, because we think about cost savings as cost savings in terms of, hey, how am I going to save money, do more with less, et cetera. But there is a risk to the cost of doing nothing, which is kind of what you said, right? What is the cost of doing nothing that if we continue to perpetuate, whether to use the phrase loosely, legacy technologies, legacy infrastructure and security constructs, what does it cost you in terms of your risk and your attack surface if you do nothing? And I think that's the assessment and the lever that you used, and to kind of make that decision. But what is really interesting is in this exercise, Ian, you mentioned a couple of things. One is the business, right? IT playing a role of servicing the business. And IT and security usually known as the Department of No, as in NO, but in this case, we're starting to evolve more to become the Department of No, which is KNOW. You're an enabler to the business, and you partner with the business. Are you able to share a little bit in terms of how you brought, the champions, rallied the troops around breaking down silos between IT, security, end user computing, all of that, as you kind of, built this case, and you didn't do it by just coming in and saying, I have all this. It was phased process, right? Like what was most critical to embark on that?
There's a lot actually. There's no one size. There's no one size fits all to really one department. I'll do a diagramming. I'll do a MPV calculation. Maybe if I can pick up and zoom in one point.
Yeah.
I was able to measure the inconsistency of a user to a mission critical journey. For example, me in the head office trying to connect to our workloads. Imagine that no visibility on that route path, and we're able to deep dive. It will give you 12 to 13 hops before you even reach that application, and that 13 hops will give you 800 milliseconds turnaround time. For me, maybe business cannot understand that, but I was able to really tell them there's a path going to the application. There's a micro millisecond before it reaches and responds. That's why there is sometimes user will complain, I cannot access it. It will take me 10 seconds to load the table. It will, yeah, our calls are being interrupted every 15 minutes. When I'm in the south, when I'm in the north, it's okay. When I'm in a central office, it's okay. So it's more of educating also our partners and business with, and introducing consistent and harmonized approach on both on net and off net, because before the legacy systems will dictate that if you're off net, you connect to this one, you access this one, then you connect, and when you're on net within the company network, it's just symbols. But times change, especially in the recent years, right? I mean, everybody wants to operate anywhere.
Right. I mean, the whole notion of the corporate network and your guest Wi-Fi network should be seamless, right? I mean, why tether to the corporate network? Interestingly enough, we run ZDX for all our employees, and I was able to, when my connectivity went down, I knew exactly what was causing it, whether it was my in-home connectivity, whether I had enough signal within, like, my mesh network, or whether it was my last mile. But that gives us the opportunity for me to know exactly who to call, whether it's my provider or
Yeah.
am I having some issue within my home since it's late in the evening. But Ian, that's fantastic. I wanted to ask, it's interesting, right? This is the problem we're trying to solve, where everyone's not pointing at each other, and the process efficiencies that you drive in terms of how you run your IT operations. But moving a little bit to creating a smart city, right? In a prep call, we talked a lot about securing malls and department stores. And I guess one of the goals you have, the business has, is to transform your security infrastructure in all the malls and the stores. And obviously you're so geographically distributed across the Philippines, across all these islands as well. So what are the first steps, to accomplishing this? How did you go about, breaking down this problem? I think the notion of everybody knowing, hey, I have to, transform my IT, and whether it's driven by a business goal, whether it's some level of transformation around your application landscape. But then obviously we then look at our security construct and say, well, how does this play in this new paradigm? But you have a very definitive business goal to go do this. So how did you go about accomplishing that with everything else you had?
If I can share, it's not only wearing an IT hat or in solving this complex branches, you also need to wear that enterprise architecture hat and to understand the business complexity of each business stream. Because a BMS or building management system has different approach. They have different IoTs, they have different servers, and more so, they have different connectivity. The POS has different story.
Yeah.
A lot of drama there. And there's also the other IoT that it's not harmonized. It's different brands across, but there's a common thing there. It's connectivity and route path. So as you understand the business context, including in putting it in one container category, oh, this is high revenue, this is medium risk, this is low risk, and after categorizing it, you can introduce the what level of priority that you can implement in those branches, because attending to those user to application relationship is really hard, because personas has different business contributions. So with that context of an enterprise architecture, understanding the business need, understanding what you have, including the last mile connectivity, and on the third ISP that the branch is connected to, you have to drill it down up to the old 7-year access point. You need to know,
Right.
And for you to deep dive, you need to also enforce a new policy, because the old policy will not work if you introduce a new process and eventually pipe in the new technology. So it's still people, process, technology, partnering with people, understanding the business context, redefining the process, because it's just a unified, and it's a more cleaner, it's a more cohesive, it's a more harmonized technology. And of course, the technology also helps us to dictate and pinpoint what's the missing piece of our backhauling architecture or direct internet architecture. And before engaging to zero trust framework, I mean, we can have that, but it will take a lot of man hours to do that. But
Right.
if you were able to inject a proper process and partner with people and the technology is ready, I think you will speed up the market.
Hmm. No, I think it's interesting, right? Because what you're talking about is signals and telemetry, right? Not just detection of what potentially could root cause an issue, but you're saying, how do we leverage, some of these new technologies like ZDX to actually give us more telemetry to understand the business, so we can truly serve the business and meet the business goals. And I think, as a consequence, a lot of CIOs, CISOs, CTOs I talk to, and we talk to, they say when they deploy a zero trust architecture, the type of telemetry they see is quite different, to what they had anticipated happening in their own organizations. I mean, I had a CISO tell me, Kavita, I did it. I deployed ZIA ZPA for these reasons, for very different goals. But then we had this like workforce of the future initiative And I realized in 20 years, we would not be able to build the workforce of the future with the way we are actually thinking about applications and um, access to applications, right? Because we are so restrictive. Because the future generations, and the new workforce that is emerging, doesn't want to be tethered to their desks. One, and two, does they are quite prolific and robust in how they utilize different types of applications, specifically SaaS applications on a daily basis. So we can either sanction it and understand and learn from it and create guardrails, or we can be prohibitive, and there's going to be shadow IT in a sense, right? That occurs. Has anything interesting come up in terms of some of the telemetry you've seen through these exercises?
Well, and one thing about the telemetry and visual dashboard that Zero Trust is providing is not only the Cloud Hub. I mean, most of the IT 5 years ago, Cloud Hub is very new. Where before you have to trace it, you have to check all logs, check all hubs, whether it's timeout, whether it's packet loss, whether it's latency issue, right?
Right.
But I have a first-hand experience. First time I saw the CDX, man, it's amazing. I saw a GUI, from your endpoint, your ISP to your router access point distribution up to the core. Then you go outside to the common breakout. Then you go to the target application. And I missed that small button on the right. If you press that, there's a command line there. It tells you everything, the latency, including the behavior and response of those systems that you're trying to do a hop before you connect to the end state. Right? So to me, it's a modern superpower that you can call the giving to your IT partners, because it's easier now. It's easier to solve problems now. It's easier to introduce new technologies because you already know the posture. It's there.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it always makes us happy to see when, we, as we continue to obviously develop and harden and evolve our platform, that, I would say operational market kind of consumption applicability of it is in real time is beneficial to your business, right? I want to talk a little bit about connectivity. I know we talked about, cost of MPLS links. We talked about moving to, in our prep call, we talked about, branch connectivity. Are there any thoughts on, as we look at the core tenets of Zero Trust, extending the concept of those Zero Trust tenets to the branch? And how do you think about that?
Well, you also need to consider the internet breakout, because most of the legacy connectivity on branches are still at the mercy of SD-WANs, or to make it short, it's still backhaul to the data center.
Right.
Trouble a lot. If you're operating nationwide, that will be a problem.
And you're back hairpinning a lot, right?
Imagine you're hairpinning all the route path, including the policy.
Yeah.
And that's the point, right? So you have to really deep dive on when can you reinvent the internet breakout. Why? There's already a gateway from your internet breakout that can manage those policies and can give you and connect you to the nearest path possible to the emission application that you are trying to connect to. And those sessions are secured, encrypted, and it's recorded. And more so, you have a visibility and control of all this. And if this internet breakout will help you to create the shortest path possible, and I think that's a key element also. If we reinvent the Zero Trust framework and introduce it to our infrastructure and our workforce, we also need to reinvent on how we connect things. And backhauling, castle remote security is the thing of the past now, and it's our mission to also adapt to this as security leaders and infrastructure leaders. We need to provide baseline capability and redefine on how we do things in terms of network infrastructure relationship. And more than that, I think for most of my colleagues' problem before, thing of the past is they don't want to solve complex network anymore. But Zero Trust Framework will help you make those complex network invincible because you're bridging the gap from the user path to the applications.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. One thing I wanted to talk about with you also as we talk about, kind of this advent of the smart city, right? There's obviously bandwidth. There's also mega trends. There's 5G as we talk about bandwidth.
Mhm.
Obviously dealing with IoT and OT. I mean, IoT is given, but do you have any OT to deal with? And then, of course, the elephant in the room. And if I don't mention it, there's no session that goes without me mentioning it, which is AI. So, what are your plans, right? Let's break it down. Maybe start with bandwidth. Maybe talk a little bit about 5G in the region specifically and your considerations for that.
Well, and to make it right, we also need to adopt as a IT executive the differentiation of what direct internet access can do and provide compared to an ordinary internet breakout. I think that key for the success for the past 2 years is we were able to put up a DIA in one of their major head office, and that DIA provides us solid connectivity 24/7, no downtime. And that path continuously being monitored, and we have a baseline security, but on top of which it connects user to the cloud application or even on-prem application in the shortest path. And on top of it is ZPA and ZIA.
Yep.
So all those upstream connectivity and sessions are protected. All those horizontal connectivity are being monitored, and it's based on the whitelist on the persona that we have provided. And connectivity is very important.
Yeah.
Because you have to be honest. You need to size up.
Yeah.
How many users? How many bandwidth it requires? If you're connecting workloads on the cloud, 70% workloads in the cloud, and you're still doing a hairpinning on-prem.
No sense. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I mean, the story of 5G is a story of wireless connectivity is already a thing of the past. But you have to be honest. But to treat it surgically, will you do it in 2020, 2024?
Yeah.
You have to have the dedicated internet access for you to provide a solid connectivity. Maybe you can do a secondary or third line for redundancy. That's a basic. But more than the connectivity, maybe if I can add, since you mentioned about what are the key technology processes for infrastructure building for a new project like smart city or a new enterprise, is more of a data points definition. Most often than not, data points and data sources are being neglected, and you have to surgically document it, identify it, locate it, and secure it. Because if these data points cannot be in a cohesive environment, forget about doing AI, because
Yeah.
AI only be intelligent if you have provided good um, bulk of data and honest data. And aside from data points, maybe I can also share to the team is you also need to have an honest review of data quality.
Yeah.
So data quality being you need to identify all the inconsistencies, the unharmonized and non-standard data so across the series of applications.
Right.
Be it cloud, on-premise, in backup systems, be in the
Structured,
back.
unstructured, streaming, graph processing, all the works, right? Database data, all of that. No, you're spot on. And I think, I'm glad you did that as a segue because AI is interesting and machine learning and AI have been around for a long time. But, there's this notion of data collection and how we are going to deal with data security, right? And kind of, especially as you talk about smart city, we're talking about collection of data, storage of data, interrogation of data, analytics around that data. And then understanding kind of what your mission critical applications are and what your crown jewels are. And then what is data that helps you run your business? Demographic data, user data, all of those things, right? Store, inventory, customer support, and all of that. But it's also you're dealing with a lot of PII data. So, how do we handle data privacy and security in this? What are some of your thoughts around data protection and data loss prevention, specifically to your data strategy, before we even think about fighting AI-generated threats?
Yeah, multiple sets of protection, and you need to identify what is the purpose of each data set, because not all data are equal, not all forms, not all data objects are equal. And it's a good thing we were able to build a data management team for that, and pipe in the master data management inside the infrastructure, because it gives us an honest review on
Hmm.
what to look at, what to do in the backup system, how to recover fast, and identify what are the data object needs to be in a certain pipeline, what are the data object needs to be stayed in the legacy. Is there a meeting point? Is there an isolation point?
Hmm.
Do we isolate users from the legacy? Do we isolate users from using an ML or AI tool, touching those data objects that are tagged as mission critical? So those honest assessment were really not even overnight duty. Right? So consistently, we're reviewing of those data sets and improving those policies. And more than that, we want to make sure that our golden data has a golden Godfather son backup, and it's recoverable, and it's maintainable. And more than the data, the user profile is also connecting to those data should be protected. And
Yeah.
on protection layer, you need to implement a ZIA or ZPA at the very least, because private access is defined based on the whitelisting and the persona, including the authorization of the users. So it matched the data management profiling of our team. It's also
Yeah.
matched the master data, which also house the data governance. And it's not easy, but you have to do it as an infrastructure leader.
So how are you handling, the use of generative AI within the organization? Are you allowing generative AI, ChatGPT? Are you creating some guardrails to see how the organization uses it? Because there's some productivity gains from that, clearly. But
Well, I don't want to pretend that we're mature in that piece, but we have implemented through the help of zero trust engineers to really isolate that
mm,
path. And as I always mention, a whitelisting, and it's not open to all users. Maybe if you're a market research, you need that. Maybe if you're a script writer, you need that. Your HR. So
yeah,
that user pool, we have a ready policy that allows access to these AI tools, and we also define what AI tools are permitted in our enterprise. So that's
right.
how the approach is on the current state, and we're continue to grow that pool. But we want to make sure all personas are identified and being placed in a proper policy that permits them a more efficient and cohesive environment at work, and not I know IT, but uh, we are we know how to approach business.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great approach, and I think no one company or is going to have the experience or expertise, right? A compression algorithm around this in the short amount of time that we've all had. But I think that we're starting to see the prolific use of generative AI across so many different applications for good and bad. And I think specific to security, as we talk about how the threat actors are performing more nefarious acts with by using generative AI, then it becomes interesting as we think about solutions, mitigation, remediation, right? How we're going to use generative AI in our detection, mitigation, remediation of specifically in handling cyber threats, right? Um, Ian had a couple more questions. And then I have some questions from our audience. One thing I wanted to touch upon, which we didn't earlier, was in general we see that ASEAN, heavy mobile usage, right? Than anywhere else in the world. Statistics, are stating 88.9% of internet users in ASEAN nations also use smartphones, highest rate in the world. Obviously, rapid adoption, outpacing Western nations, China, etc., and creating sort of some interesting dynamics as we talk about the threat landscape, as we talk about all of that, extending to endpoints, right? Extending to IoT devices and endpoints. So in your role, and especially at SM Prime Holdings, what have you seen like as being some of the greatest challenges in securing your mobile devices? And then how are you kind of handling that?
Yeah, it's funny because it's a tricky question, because I personally had a hard time to really get the buy-ins of our HR to do user education. It's a
Yeah.
partnership with the training team. I mean, that's a first step we did because few years back, mobile device is not an issue. You can
Yeah.
do even BYOD, but right now it's a more faster engine than your computer workstation, right? So that's the first step we did. It took 3 weeks. Imagine that, doing the FQ and doing on the knowledge transfer, prepping the implementation, and we did it by batch. Would you believe? The early adopters, of course, IT. They don't have any choice. All ITs built into basic mobility policy. That's a given.
Yeah.
No doubt. By 7 a.m. bam, everyone is enabled with that policy. The next stage, HR, since they partner with us.
Of
Then
course.
this is a 2 week rollout, and it's never been easy for us because we are monitoring where can we meet that 90%. Is it on
Yeah.
the or we spill over another week to give more uh, breathing point to other who will resist not to use it. And we did a lot of explaining and partnering and training. That's one part. And the good thing about this, 2 years ago, I was working with your top engineer, Charles.
Yeah.
We tried to download this ZCZ in our mobile app, both any software, be it iOS, Android. And surprisingly, this license model of the zero trust that we partner with is already counted as one seat, whether I'm using it in my personal device or workstation. And now all the mission critical, it's a bonus on top of the VMS, is enabled by Zscaler app and the monitors, the visibility and control monitors, gives the same amount of protection you have in your workstation. And to me, that's a very big bonus because
I mean, I'm
that's the
glad you're saying that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about policy, right? Defining fine-grained policy and access control,
Mhm.
and really thinking about adaptive access across different endpoints and devices. So yeah, I mean, it's by design, but I'm happy to hear you say that from a usability perspective, and obviously from a cost management or management perspective, it's seamless for you and your team. And we could go for hours. Really always enjoy speaking with you. I wanted to really quickly kind of bring up, we'll open up questions to the floor. Let me ask another question that one of the attendees have posed. Since adopting zero trust, what has the impact been on the perception of cybersecurity for your board of directors and executive team?
Uh, it's not an easy question. It's a good question, and you have to be creative when you're presenting this to the board because prior zero trust framework,
All
you
right.
have to crunch these numbers, prepare for number X of hours, and crunch it in trying to put it in one single deck, right? The advantage of the cybersecurity presentation now, we are onboarded with zero trust framework is sustainability of having those honest real data near real time. If today's our board meeting, I scrape out
Yeah.
the cybersecurity posture of this day and presenting the actual capability that we have blocked 2,300 threats for the past 14 days.
Yeah.
And the top contributors is this department, and the top contributor is this user. It is very surgical. So prior jumping into the zero trust framework, we don't have that luxury to one press of a button, you have a security posture, cybersecurity report. But now it's being drilled down to types of threat. For
Hmm.
example, 1,300 threats, 44% is phishing, 22% is virus, and the rest are malware. It's easier because we're not using a PowerPoint to present it, but
Yeah.
using an
You're
actual data from
ones,
the
yeah.
tool. So the real-time threat is there. So to me, there's no difficulty in presenting your posture because it's already there, and the bonus is it's already blocked
Hmm.
because other tools, man. I'm saying on the point of a tool perspective. For example, EPP. I don't want to name drop for the
Yeah.
endpoint protection. There are only at least 82% efficacy of this. What happened to the 18% or 20%? You do it manually.
Yeah.
you address it manually. And there are threats, there are attacks that is mitigated on an
Right.
80% view, but how about the unmitigated? So
Right.
that becomes a problem, Kavita. So to me, you have to compensate what is the current tool. And
Yeah.
on top of that tool, what capability you can add. Is it the framework of zero trust that will solve your current business dealings, protect the data, protect the user, protect the application, and the bonus or the plus, you see visibility and control. And to me, it gives us a good, and it's sustainable. It's
Mm.
easy to, anytime you need to present, just click the link, plug into your credential, it's there. It's not hard anymore to present a cybersecurity posture.
Yeah.
And, and we're lucky to be on that state because the board really understands the security posture in a real-time scenario.
No, I think that's really important, right? At the end of the day, this is one thing that we talk about. Zero trust is not a product,
Mhm.
right? It's an architecture, a framework, right? And seemingly a potential standard. As we
Mhm.
think about that, we think about kind of this robust ecosystem that everybody architects technologies. You know, you as a consumer should be pushing the vendor community to be true to what we posit to be zero trust, right? And
Mhm.
I think in a true zero trust architectural environment, we should be thinking about bilateral threat, hunting information upstream and downstream. So from an endpoint perspective, from a proxy perspective, et cetera, right? That everything is clicking in together. And if we are all architecting in the right way, then because not one platform is going to be able to do it all. And so we have to start thinking about those things, right? So I think from what you're saying is the introspection allows you to have that visibility, to be able to now drill down on what needs to get done.
Mhm.
And I have another question that was asked
Mhm.
around data flows. So this question is, how would you describe your security posture as it relates to data flows with third parties and partners?
Oh, we did a series of third-party review, and it came to our time that we need to review the persona of each partner, including the suppliers, because they are treated as third party. If you think about jumping to the framework, it's not anonymous anymore. We were able to onboard them to a unified zero trust framework. Now, more than ever, we have identities of this particular partner, particular third party who supports parking, for example, particular a partner that support building management system. And there will be no lateral transfers because the policy is stated based on the specific IP or FQDN that you have provided to us, which is your server or our server that we share to you on a basic subnet and a whitelisted IP. You're stick with that.
Right.
And more than ever, doing a persona review is really tiring, but it's rewarding. And after the persona review is whitelisting, after the whitelisting is testing and commissioning, and they're happy because it's more faster.
Right.
And and on top of that, ice cream is a cherry because every time there's a problem before we jump into zero trust, the third party will always complain, "Hey, the server is down. We cannot connect." You have to check. And the IT goes, no, it's up. Maybe you know that ping pong uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
push shoot in RSA will cause the 1 hour window time maintenance to 30 minutes because they cannot see where's the route path problem. With ZDX, I know your ISP, you're connected to North, you have a problem in your ISP. And your computer is 99% CPU, 99. You have to reboot your computer. Easy, 5 minutes solved. So it's a bonus for us because we have extended this capability to them. For them, it's also a bonus because without jumping to the unified cohesive environment and
Right.
the methodology and architecture of zero trust, we don't have the capability. So it's a win-win, and it's not easy. Again, you just need to deep dive and be honest about it.
I mean, you have to be transformational, and as an IT and a security leader these days, to really start thinking about, as you said, somewhere during the middle of our discussion, you have to really think about whether the construct we've had in place is tenable for the future, right, or tenable for now, and really have to deep dive on this, and it is daunting. It is scary. It is, you know, for a lot of leaders, a big stretch. But the thing is, there are many leaders like you who have successfully accomplished this, right? And there are a lot of best practices out there. And so sessions like this aim not to sell, but, you know, really aim to highlight some of those best practices and learnings, you know, for your peers. So, Ian, I have one more question. What advice would you give other leaders such as yourself who are looking to bridge, you know, this cross the chasm, I would say, you know, kind of a phrase, to modernize their IT and to really transform their security posture, right? In light of these mega trends, and in light of the threat landscape, with the specific interest in thinking about traditional organizations have IT, networking, you know, security in different buckets, but how do they reframe this thinking?
Okay.
You know, your organizational advice.
Okay. An honest take on this, I have to mention that you really need to deep dive.
Yeah.
There's no other way. You cannot just entrust it to somebody else, to a network guy, to an apps team, to a platforms team, to security. These guys are siloed. And being honest is knowing what you do. And knowing what you do needs understanding the complexity and a tool and reinventing the process. And as a person and people in the context of enterprise architect, you have to educate and re-educate them. And aside from educating them, you have to unlearn and relearn some of the new factors that will give you capability of how to be honest in your infrastructure as a whole and keep that siloed in one cohesive environment. And aside from doing that, aside from deep dive, aside from being honest, try to dig in what zero trust framework is in architecture, because zero trust will give you that opportunity to really identify what is around. There's no gray area anymore. Everyone has identity anymore. Everyone can be visible. Uh, Anyone can jump to the contextual factors, including the behavioral and telemetry. You can see it. I mean, zero trust framework is fantastic because it changed how we move things. It changed how we connect things, and we have to reimagine on how we operate as infrastructure leaders. I mean, gone are the days that, oh, that's network, that's not mine. Oh,
Yeah.
that's platform, that's not mine. No, it's high time for us to be really honest. And back in the day, 96, 98, there's no sysad, there's no network, there's no security. You're all-in-one engineer.
Yeah.
And we have to go back to the roots. And we are in the generation that we have our own magic power now, which is zero trust framework. And I think we have to capitalize on it and use it and educate our people, improve the process, and jump into the technology.
I love that. I think, and all said and done, I believe and I think you believe too, that we're at the precipice of being able to do great things with technology, right? As we continue to do this, and to have the business run and to have the peace of mind so you can continue to do what your business is all about, rather than, managing IT tickets or constantly dealing with challenges, attacks, etc. Right? That's keeping the lights on. It shouldn't be the end goal, right? That the end goal should be driving profitability, innovation, and business growth, right, for the business. So, Ian, with that, we're coming close to the end of the hour. I really want to thank you. I know you're such a busy schedule, and for spending this time with us, for being such a great partner for us. And it has been truly a fascinating discussion for me personally, and I'm hoping I'm sure our audience has learned a lot from you today. So thank you for that. I do apologize to all of you once again for the connectivity issues right at the beginning of the session. Just to highlight some takeaways that we pulled together from what Ian had said, if we can just put up that summary slide. Ian stressed the importance of three things, really understanding the complexity, I would say, of traditional networking infrastructure allows you to appreciate the value of zero trust, to eliminate it, that being one. Two is teaming up with your ecosystem, on a compelling and clear proof of value for evidence, right? Proof of value helps you go back and really, one, measure your vendors, progress and efficacy, two, helps you really start to think about how you can appropriate your funds to think about risk mitigation, right, in the right way. And also really thinking about the cost of doing nothing. What is the cost of doing nothing if you wait, if you delayed? What does that look like? What is the impact on your risk posture? What is the impact on your security? What is the impact on your user experience? And then finally, of course, Ian, with his experience in deploying ZDX and the visibility into end user digital experience, really helping them, as an organization, leverage that telemetry, helping them improve their business processes in their daily operations. As some key takeaways. Ian shared lots of amazing golden nuggets with us today. But with that, I wanted to thank everyone who joined us today. I hope, and we hope, to see you at our next Executive Connect Live on LinkedIn. And the team will obviously keep you constantly updated. And with that, everybody take care, stay safe, healthy, and from all of us here at Zscaler, have a great day.